11 years ago, it was Nikolai Davydenko saluting at the opening O2 Arena ATP Finals. 11 years later, it's Daniil Medvedev. Russia bookending a wonderful, wonderful tenure for the Elite Eight tournament in London. What a morning it was for Daniil Medvedev, overcoming a set deficit against Dominic Thiem. 4-6, 7-6, 6-4. This is the Tennis Menu's ATP Finals Daily Show, the final one of our week, and it's been a long week to get there, but it's been very, very fun indeed. Val Ferbo here with you. Remember, on Wednesday we've got our Tennis Menu webinar as well. We're very excited for that. 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Myself and Marc is taking you through all things coaching. You can sign up via the link below in this video and also on our social media platforms as well. Marc and I will be sharing that link later on as well. But Marc joins me, Val Ferbo, today. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, Val, and wow, what a match. Incredible. And I found myself for the first time in a long time actually cheering for someone to win. I'm not a cheerer. I'm not a fan of tennis. I'm a coach, and I see it from an analytical perspective. But after my poor efforts are back against Rafael Nadal at the French Open, I thought I needed one of the players that I picked to win a tournament, and I'm thankfully, Daniil Medvedev did that for me and did me proud. And, you know, it was a great match. Obviously, Dominic Thiem played some insane tennis, and for Daniil to stick it out the way he did, get through that second set in the breaker and get through that match after he had so many chances to break early in that third set. But what a match. It was absolutely great to watch, and what a great end to obviously an ordinary 2020 for a lot of people, but not for these two players.
Yep, exactly right. And it does feel like this tournament started 2 weeks ago with all the things that we've seen, all the epic matches that we've come through, and it's probably been the best ATP finals that we have seen, especially at the O2. And unfortunately, no crowds there to enjoy it. Joel Frucci joins us as well for the final time of this 2020 ATP Finals show. How are you?
Yeah, good, boys. Feeling good after a good morning of tennis. It was great to see Daniil get up and just watching that guy talk. I mean, he gets me excited. He's funny. I like him.
And the funny thing is that last year he was feeding off the US Open crowd energy and just being a real smartass to them, which was absolutely fantastic. This year there was no energy to feed off, and obviously we know the result now, a stunning victory for him after going winless last year, which has been widely documented. No Russian had won a match since Nikolai Davydenko at that 2009 event at the O2 Arena, the ATP Finals. So for him to bookend this tournament for Russia is genuinely unbelievable. And we've seen so many generations go through this tournament in the O2 Arena, and to see the next gen well and truly alive here with Thiem and Medvedev both going through. He's the first player ever at this event to beat the top three in the world. He knocked off Djokovic in straight, Nadal in an epic. He finally solved the Nadal puzzle, as we said yesterday, and now Dominic Thiem, who he had a 1-3 deficit against. So all those players he had a negative win-loss record against, and he's come up against all three and finished his year as, I think, on a 10-match winning streak, is it, Joel, which is the most impressive part.
Yeah, geez, what an end to the season for Daniil. And, you know, we spoke a lot about his clay season and how poor that was. Well, after that, he really came back with flying colours. Obviously had a couple of losses before Bercy, but what an end to the season. And it really was the best of Daniil Medvedev. He only lost, I think, 3 sets in that run as well. And it kind of feels like we've been waiting for him to put together a bit of a run like this. We know he made the final, the 2019 US Open, as we've spoken about on this show before. But yeah, look, for him, I feel as though winning a year-end finals is a really key stepping stone for him. We've been talking a lot about this, this next bracket of players, Dominic Thiem, Daniil Medvedev, those kind of guys, and whether they can really crack the hierarchy of the big three. And those two guys that we saw in the final really are the two, certainly, and Thiem's taken some steps in getting there, obviously winning his maiden Grand Slam with the US Open this year. Daniil's still to do that, but hopefully it gives him a nice little springboard going into 2021. And he really is, I think, great for the sport. So hopefully the more we see of him going into big matches like this, the pointy end of tournaments, the better, because, as we know, he's he's a really quirky guy. He's fun to watch. I know, Mark, you were saying maybe not the prettiest player in some respects, technically, I suppose, but I think he really is good for the sport. So the more we see of him, the better.
Yeah, you are definitely right, Joel. He's definitely not the prettiest, but but the way he does play, he's got it all. The one thing that he probably doesn't have as much is the net game, Mark. But everything else he does have. He's 6'6", has a big serve, moves around the court like Diego Schwartzman, and his ground strokes are just as good. He can create angle off a dime, like we said yesterday as well. So looking at the tournament as a whole, what did you see from Daniil Medvedev throughout the week that he can really springboard into next year? And who knows whether the Australian Open does go ahead in January, but if it does, he'd almost be the favourite, wouldn't he?
I think he'd be one of the favourites. I think we chatted a little bit off air, and for Daniil to win a Grand Slam, you've got to beat two of Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, or Thiem to get through and win a Grand Slam, and that is no easy feat. But he's obviously in that group now. I think we can almost put him along the likes of Thiem, and obviously Zverev probably sits just below that. But I think for Daniil, the way he plays off the back of the court is exceptional. I think the conditions need to suit him, though. I think there was one. Mm-hmm. I know we talked about this at the start of the tournament. The conditions really suited him here. The fast hard courts or the fast surface where the ball comes onto the racket's really important. And we saw that today where Dominic Thiem totally flipped the way he played and literally sliced. I think it was about 65 or 70% of the time. I think you've got the stats there, Val. But I think the way that people play Medvedev is to take the ball speed off the game and try and allow him to generate his own ball speed. Now, the problem with that is that if you give him the chance to dictate, then, if he gets a bit of a groove on, then it's very hard to stop him. And that's basically what happened today. Now, when you take away, Dominic Thiem is probably one of the most unbelievable offensive players when he's on song. Today, he tried to take away or nullify Medvedev's strengths and give him no ball speed. But, Dominic Thiem needed to play his game on those big moments. He needed to play the big backhand. He needed to go big on the forehand. At times, he just sort of took the speed off it too often. And that's probably was his undoing in the end. And, Medvedev is, as you said, he's tall, he's got the big serve, which has probably been more efficient at this surface than anywhere else, where he's been serving on average of probably about 8 to 12 aces per match. He's winning about 80% of points on his first serve in all of these matches. And that's probably what's going to hold him in good stead, leading into the Australian Open if it does eventuate. But I think any fast surface, Daniil Medvedev is going to be a very, very hard player to beat. I still think his play game needs a bit of work. I'm not sure about his grass, but, there's definitely no doubt that the faster surfaces on the hard court is definitely his forte.
Yep, I definitely agree. And that's why we've seen his success at the US Open, traditionally the fastest court in a Grand Slam. And then we saw what he did in the US Summer last year heading into the European indoor tournaments, where in indoor, the ball speeds off the court a little bit more and, has created a lot. But Dominic Thiem changed a lot about his game. And you are right. He played his brute force game against Novak Djokovic and it worked. Why didn't he do the same against Daniil Medvedev to shift up from the slice? And the stat tweeted by Craig O'Shaughnessy, so the Thiem's backhand spins, on the top spin backhand, he had 23%. And then on the slice, he had 77%, and as opposed to 66% from the rest of the tournament to 34% for the slice. So 77 from 34% to 77% in terms of spin on his slice. That's a drastic change, isn't it? Yeah,
it's almost a 50% turnaround, really, when you look at it. I mean, he's, and we talked about this yesterday. I know, Joel, you tweeted it out, but I see Dominic Thiem as having two swords. He's got a massive forehand. He's got a massive backhand. And today he just took that away. Now, as a coach, I'm there encouraging to play to your strengths. I feel like, if Thiem plays to his strengths, he's hard to beat regardless. Now, you can add in the mix-up of the slice and change the ball speed and the tempo of the rally, but that shouldn't be your go-to. Your go-to should be your strengths, and that is go big, be aggressive, take the game away from Medvedev, and he didn't quite do that enough today. Although, there was like 4 points difference in the match overall, and if this was the other way, we'd probably be saying that the tactic was working and did really well. So, it's a really hard one for that, but I think Dominic Thiem plays his best tennis when he plays the way he did against Novak Djokovic, step up to the court, take the game away from his opponent. be able to go back and be heavy and mix it up with the slice, but that's not your first game style. And that was today, and Medvedev was able to probably get a bit of a range and rhythm on that slice backhand of Thiem's, and it didn't hurt him in the end.
Was it a mistake?
Oh, you'd probably think now, looking back at it, I mean, in hindsight, yeah, it probably was. But, like we said, if 4 points either way, I mean, if the game goes Dominic Thiem's way in that second set, then obviously the plan works. So, you go, well, at the end of the day, it's a point here or there. It wasn't probably the tactic that lost him the match, but maybe certain points where he did utilize a slice instead of the backhand, probably it did hurt him in the end.
Yep. And our good friend Shane Leonard from Data Driven Sports Analytics saying that the slice, keeping it low to Medvedev has worked well generally, but when it's too predictable, the value in the tactic diminishes. And I guess it's the same with a lot of players. When you can start to read when Nadal is going to play a slice, it's very easy to predict where that's going to go. You can come in and try and finish the point like Medvedev did yesterday. So, it was a brilliant performance from Daniil. And Joel, looking at his year as a whole, fourth round at the Australian Open, semis at the US Open, didn't really do too much in Cincinnati. And then opening round of the French Open wasn't very convincing, but he's just gotten better and better and better as the year has gone on. And looking at the results, I think the way that he goes about his business, his coach even said that he doesn't know where the limit is. And when you look at a guy like Medvedev who's already achieved so much at 24 years old, that's a very impressive thing to say.
Yeah, it really is. And we've been saying it a lot on the show, but the biggest thing for Daniil is he needs to become that all-court player. Really, I think that's the biggest thing. Clearly, we know that hard is going to be his surface. And I mean, it was an interesting year for him, 2020, because he didn't really start off particularly well. I remember back in the Australian Open when he did go down. I think it was against Stan Wawrinka in that fourth round. That was, all credit to Stan. He was playing pretty well at the time and sort of looking the player that he once was. But at the time, I remember thinking that was a match that I would have expected Daniil Medvedev to win. And even in that first round, I remember I actually went to his first round match. Was lucky enough to have a seat in RLA for that when he played against the big foe Francis Tiafoe, and he did drop a set in that match, as good as Tiafoe can be. Again, that's probably one that you'd maybe look at and say, yeah, probably Daniil wins that in straight sets normally. But I mean, all you can do is get better over time, and no mean feat in 2020 either to sort of overcome that break in many respects. And of course, he did have the massive downturn on clay where he really didn't do much at all. I remember the loss against Ugo Humbert was a little alarming, I thought. And then in I think it was Cologne where he got beaten by Opelka. That was another one, and he really lost his cool in that match. And admittedly at the time I was thinking, going into Bercy and coming into the year-end finals, I really didn't have a lot of confidence in Daniil. Of course, that probably changed a little bit after he won Paris, but certainly before that, I was kind of thinking, where is he at? Like, has he kind of hit his ceiling, even though he is still young? 24 is still very young, but I think he really needed the end to the season that he had to get those two titles and go into 2021. And definitely, I think he's put some healthy pressure on himself going into next season. I'm really excited to see what he can do, and I think really to break into that top bracket of the elite talent. Federer, Djokovic, Nadal. He probably needs that slam. He really does, and I hope he gets it. I really do.
Yeah, I think we both concur. But you're looking at the results this year, it has fluctuated a lot. We'll get to Thiem in a second, but his losses have come to Djokovic, very close to the ATP Cup, but there he beat Fognini, Isner, Ruud, Schwartzman, lost to Wawrinka, as you said, at the Oz Open, but then straight sets losses to Pospisil in Rotterdam, Simon, who's aging and only a shadow of what he once was in Marseille, then Bautista Agut in Cincinnati, and that was a 3-set loss in the quarterfinal. First tournament back, Dominic Thiem, he wasn't competitive. He was, but he wasn't in the semi-final of that US Open. 2-6, 6-7, 6-7. It's a straight sets loss. Yes, those 2 sets could have gone either way, but it wasn't a straight sets loss. He's not at that level. He should have at least taken a set there. Then Ugo Umber, as you said, in Hamburg, Fucsovics at Roland Garros, Opelka in the second round of St. Petersburg, Vienna to Kevin Anderson in straight sets as well, mind you. And then all of a sudden, it turns into a successful year. He's a Masters champion for the 3rd time, and he's won the ATP Finals, Marc. So I think that's a pretty damn solid year when you think about it. But if he hadn't won either of those 2 titles, we're thinking, oh, geez, where to now for Daniil? It's funny what 2 weeks can do.
Yeah, he does fluctuate, doesn't he? Like, sometimes you think, he's on top of his game, and then he just throws in, like he did at Roland Garros, just a poor match. I mean, clay's not his surface. There's no doubt he needs the ball coming onto his racket. But, one of the things that has been probably his downfall is his mindset. And, he does get quite flustered pretty easily. And if he does have a few losses in a row, that does play on his mind. And we spoke about that in one of our shows earlier on in the year, where I think he had 5 or 6 first-round losses in a row somewhere. And it's one of those things where he sort of goes, has a really good peak, and then he has a really bad troughs, and then he comes up again and has a peak. So he's almost sort of like too up and down to be consistent at the level. So we hope that 2021 brings that consistency for him, because as Joel said, he's just a great character of the game and someone that you want to see playing in those finals. And, alongside guys like Dominic Thiem, I think, the next tier are biting at the heels of those good players, of those great players in Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer. So you look at, Tsitsipas, you look at Zverev, Daniil Medvedev, Dominic Thiem, they're all now just bunching up just a little bit more and just getting that slightly bit closer. And, if they can do it over 5 sets for 7 matches, okay, we're gonna start to see these guys hopefully compete for that, a couple of Grand Slams coming forward, because it's been dominated by those top 3 players for so long.
Sure has. And he finishes the year on an 11-match winning streak, which will bode well for him going into, whenever the tennis tour restarts. Who knows when that will be? We hope January, but things are looking increasingly unlikely with the Victorian government and the Australian government stepping in. So things are all up in the air at the moment. But Dominic Thiem, before we do go, his year was kind of inconsistent. He went 1-2 at the ATP Cup with losses to Coric and Hurkacz, but beat Diego Schwartzman. And then the Australian Open final, somewhat, I guess, came out of nowhere. He never really amounted to too much. I think it was the 4th round that was his best performance at the AO before this year. 2nd round, pushed to 5 by Alex Bolt, beats Taylor Fritz in 4, then gets over Monfils in straight sets. Then he beats Nadal in 4. Then he beats Zverev in 4. And it's like, oh, wow, he's here. And then, 2 sets to 1 up on Novak Djokovic. And then, as Joel said the other day, it was one drop volley that really turned the match and lost that final. But then quarters in Rio, losing to the world number 128, Gianluca Mager from Italy. Then Cincinnati, first round or second round with a bye, Filip Krajinovic destroying him, but then wins the US Open. Quarters at the French in his next tournament, was pretty fatigued, so it was an effort to get there with the draw that he had. Cilic, Sock, Ruud, Gaston pushed into 5. Then it was Diego Schwartzman. Quarters in Vienna. He actually hasn't played that many tournaments this year, especially since the comeback. So I think the thing with Dominic Thiem is he's managing his schedule a little bit better. And as a coach, Marc, how important is that? Because remember, he used to burn himself out by this time at the end of the year, and the US Open would always be a tournament where he'd either retire or he'd burn himself out early, and then the end of the year was just pretty much a write-off for him.
And that's probably about 99% of the tour, Val. I think the guys that, apart from the top 3 are out there chasing money and points. And that's your whole year, is you need to keep that going. And, you don't have the endorsements and you don't have these big deals that are going to get you the money that you need to be able to support yourself for long term. So, you only get a certain amount of time in this sport. And, one of my quotes is, you're a person a lot longer than you are an athlete. So, for 10 years, you've got to milk as much as you can out of it to be able to sustain the level and sustain your life for a long period of time. So, you look at Dominic Thiem now, he's, I think he's won $27 million in prize money now. I'm guessing his endorsements are right up there. So, financially, he's quite set. He's now the ability to pick and choose what he wants to play. Similar to the top 3. He becomes one of the top 4 now to be able to, not burn himself out at the end of the year and be able to still sustain the level. And that's part and parcel for this sport. You need to get yourself to that level, and then you've got to stay at that level. And to stay there, you can't play 30 tournaments a year. You've got to reduce that, and you've got to play the ones you need to play, and time them perfectly and periodize your planning as well as you can, and peak for the right times and make sure you rest at the right time. So, that's part and parcel as being a coach. You've got to make sure your player is able to get the results you want at the right tournaments.
Yep, and that's exactly what he's done this year. He's played 8 tournaments and won nearly $6 million in prize money, Joel. So that's something that I think Dominic Thiem will look at. And I think even though, yes, I said before he's only won the one title, this is probably his most impressive year yet, because he's shown the consistency that we've craved for so many years from Dominic Thiem. And last year was such a step in the right direction. Another Grand Slam final. He makes the final, the ATP Finals. He's a Masters 1000 champion. But this year, he's just been able to elevate himself to that next level to show that he can actually go with these big guys over 5 sets, and 2 sets to love down in a Grand Slam final to come back and do it. That's the first time someone did it in 16 years, and he was able to come back and do it. And I think that's the most impressive thing from a Dominic Thiem perspective. And then to back that up and play well at the French Open when his body was pretty cooked.
Yeah, you summed it up perfectly, Val. I think, that the US Open title was such an important ceiling for him to break. That was really the one, even though it was the only title for him this year. It was so important that he had that win. And just overall, I've never really felt as confident now as I have in Dominic Thiem's overall game. Like when I look at him play now, I think, Dominic Thiem's playing this match. He's going to play well, and he's probably going to win. Whereas probably before this year, maybe even as recently as 2019, I would look at him and say, yeah, look, he's good, but he could have an off day and potentially could sort of fall over from there. But not so much anymore. And it's interesting, kind of like Daniil, that it did turn into a really solid breakthrough year for Dominic Thiem, because I remember we were talking about him a lot over the COVID break, and he was playing a fair few exhibition events, and even after the restart, he kind of didn't really look that good. He was having a few losses. He was losing to some players that you wouldn't really say that Dominic Thiem would lose to normally.
That loss to Krajinovic was genuinely terrible. He was a it was. And I remember even asking you, Marc. I think it was on the very first time that we spoke to you on Breakpoint, and I asked you if you're in the Thiem camp, are you sort of worried by his form? And you said absolutely not. I think he's probably just going at kind of half kilter. And in the end, you were dead right, because in the end, he got a run on, and we saw his best tennis.
I'm glad I was right for once. Yeah, it's actually it's nice to be right, but you're right. Like it's all timing in this game, and at the end of the day, like when you look at the peaks of the best players in the world, it comes usually around the 27-year of age mark, and you're starting to see guys like Medvedev starting to come through at that age at 24, getting into 25. Dominic Thiem's at 27 or whatever he is now. Now they're starting to really hit their straps, and it's really interesting in tennis. The hardest thing to explain to young players and coaches is it's a long game. Play the long game. You don't want to be the best 14-year-old in the world. Make sure that you can sustain the level and get better as the years go on, and time your run as you need to and peak when you need to. And that's obviously Dominic Thiem's done an amazing job of that. Now he's 27. Everyone goes, oh, he's been around for a long time. He has. You need to pay your dues. You need to experience things. You need to go through the losses. You need to go through the wins. You need to understand what makes you tick. You need to understand what makes you win and what makes you lose. And you find different things. And it's a trial and error kind of thing. And Dominic Thiem obviously, has done that. And, over a period of time, he's been thereabouts, but never gone over, that threshold. And now all of a sudden he's broken the barrier, and here it goes. He's off and running now. And, I think, they're chasing now. They're really chasing at the heels of these big guns. I just hope over 5 sets they can sustain the level, because you need to against Djokovic, Nadal, Federer to be able to win a Grand Slam.
Yep, and that's exactly right. I think both of these guys can do that now. And, I think just in summation for this tournament, and I think this has been my favourite ATP Finals event in terms of just the sheer quality of matches that we've seen. I think the last 3 matches, it's so rare that all of them go to 3 sets. And I think last year both semifinals were won in straight sets. The year beforehand was very similar as well. So I think to see all of the final 3 matches go the absolute distance and in excess of 2.5 hours. And then you've got some of those epic group matches that we saw, and what Thiem and Nadal were able to produce, what Nadal and Tsitsipas were able to produce, and then what Djokovic and Medvedev produced as well. And even some of the Djokovic Zverev matches. I think the whole tournament was just filled with quality, and I think this has probably been my favorite one, especially the O2. Aside from the years that Roger Federer won, because go Roger. But yeah, no, I think this was, in terms of quality of tennis, I think this one, Joel, stands out above the rest.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the 2 biggest guys made the semis, Djokovic and Rafa, and so did the top 4, and it was the first time since 2004. And normally you'd look at an event and say, well, it's kind of boring, the top 4 out of 8 made the semifinals, whoop-de-doo. But in terms of the actual equity of the play, that was the most impressive thing. And in the end, we had the 2 biggest guys in the semi-final, but then in quotation marks, the hires to the thrones, if you like, beat them and beat them in cracking matches. And we ended up with the champion being Daniil Medvedev, who is someone that we think excuse me, that we think of really highly, and that we think will win a lot of titles and hopefully a few Grand Slams in his career. So all up a fantastic tournament. It was brilliant to watch.
Yep, it definitely was. And in the doubles, it was Wesley Kulov and Nikola Mektic, the first ever Croatian singles or doubles to win this tournament. And Kulov in their last match together, 6-2, 3-6, 10-5 over Jurgen Melzer and Eduard Roger Vasselin. Good to see Jurgen Melzer still throwing his racket around, and he's been going for a long time, so still having a lot of success there. But that's the doubles win. In singles, it was Daniil Medvedev winning over Dominic Thiem 4-6, 7-6, 6-4 in an absolutely epic tournament. And remember, you can subscribe. Daily Show 10 is your code for the tennismenu.com for that $99.90 subscription. That's US dollars, $99.90. You can jump on the tennismenu.com, sign up, put that code in, you get 10% off down to $89.90. 600 tennis-specific drills and resources to make you a better tennis coach, designed perfectly by the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend, Marc Safoulis. I had to give you one last pump up before we do go. Marc, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting tennis again with you this week. It's not the last time we are going to see you this year, though, because we do have a little bit of a surprise in store. We are going to do a 2020 review live video. We'll confirm when that is via our social media. But the 3 of us will be doing that. So it's not the last time we are going to see you, but it is going to be a social media live video. So no swearing.
Yeah, that's hard for me. I think we've got a few things coming up. We've got obviously the webinar this Wednesday. So if you haven't signed into that, if you cannot make it, if you sign up, you still get a recording sent to you when it is all complete. So sign up as soon as you can. We only have a few spots remaining. Actually, we had an influx last night after our social media post, and it's actually almost full. So get your registration in ASAP. Looking forward to that Wednesday. Looking forward to the end of season show, and looking forward to 2021, where I know we're going to see a lot more of, hopefully you guys are happy to see us all back again. But Val, Joel and I will be back doing a lot of shows, a lot of podcasts, and we can't wait to share tennis with everyone. I think it's tennis is one of those sports that people try and keep the information close to their chest, but we hopefully show people that we're not scared to give away everything we know, not scared to bring tennis to everyone. And we want to make sure that people are learning from our experiences in the game for over a period of time.
Exactly right. And yeah, we look forward to seeing each other on Wednesday as well for the Tennis Menu webinar. Remember, do sign up, 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. I'm not sure what that is around the world, so check your time zones and you can sign up through there. But Joel Frucci, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure again talking tennis with you this week. No
worries, boys. Thanks a lot for having me on again. It's been great fun.
It has been great fun. And we're going to leave you from the ATP Finals show with this tweet from @97 in the fifth on Twitter. Djokovic in 2020. His dad predicted Novak will win all 4 slams and tie Federer. His mum's statement, he was chosen by God. His coach in the French Open, Nadal has no chance. Djokovic in 2020. Water can transform through players. Adria COVID tour. USO default, PTPA, wants best of 3 at Grand Slams. Stay strong, Sasha. Not a good year for Novak, but we're going to leave you with a little bit of comedy from the year that was, and we'll get to more comedy when we do our live show. We'll confirm that on social media during the week. But it has been Val Febo, Marc Zafoulis, and Joel Friggi joining you for the ATP Finals. It has been our pleasure. Remember, you can follow us on the Tennis Menu on all the social media platforms. Just search the Tennis Menu. We are there. We thank everybody for their support. We thank everybody for tuning in and for their social media engagements as well. We love your support, and we do appreciate every view that we do get. So thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure for us to bring this tournament to you. So thank you very much. All three of us signing off, but we'll see you again very soon on Tennis Menu TV.